Today we are going to make the creamiest white pasta sauce that you have ever made, and I am using an ingredient that is going to blow your mind: white beans. Hi, I'm Sam with Bites of Wellness. Come cook with me. One of the things I love about this pasta is that everything kind of cooks up together so that dinner can be ready in about 15 minutes. To do that though, you really need to plan in advance. So I've already taken the time to chop the onion and garlic, and I'm going to go ahead and really quickly just chop up the broccoli into bite-sized pieces so that once the water is boiling, all I have to focus on is making the sauce and then adding the broccoli at the last 2 minutes of the water boiling. And we're going to just quickly chop the broccoli. You want this to be in bite-sized pieces. You're not necessarily worried about how it looks. You just want it to be able to cook really quickly because we're only adding this to the boiling pasta water during the last 2 minutes. So if you want to retain the look of broccoli, kind of cut it down into these bite-sized pieces. If you don't care at all, just go crazy and chop in this. I brought a pot of water up to a boil. We're going to add a big pinch of salt. This helps to salt the pasta from the inside so that it really seems seasoned at the end. And then we're going to add a box of pasta. Use whatever you like here. I've got some penne that I'm using. Typically, I would love this with fettuccine noodles, but I'm out of them. So the tip for this is that you are going to cook this pasta for a few minutes less than it indicates on the box because we want to cook the pasta sauce with the pasta at the end. So if you cook it all the way to al dente, it's going to overcook by the time we add the sauce and everything like that. So I'm going to take 2 minutes off of the lowest number on the box. So this says to cook probably for 12 minutes. I'm going to stop it at 10 minutes. So there's your heads up. And then even more than that, I'm going to set an alarm at 8 minutes because I need to add the broccoli in. So you're going to cook the entire pot of pasta 2 minutes less, and then 2 minutes before the end, add your broccoli in. Let's cook our pasta. The base of the white bean sauce is actually onions and garlic. I find that the onion and garlic gives it a really deep, rich flavor. It only adds a couple of minutes to the overall dish, so it's totally worth it if you have it on hand. This is a preheated skillet. You can see that it's hot. Going to add the onions, cook this for just 2 or 3 minutes. Make sure they get nice and sauteed. Onions are done a little bit faster. They're a little bit browner than I'd like, but it'll still be really good. Going to add garlic. I just thinly slice the garlic. You don't need to go through the process of mincing this up into fine bits because we are going to blend all of this in the blender anyway. So you just want to get it cooked at this point. The reason I don't add garlic right away is because garlic has a tendency to burn. So adding that layer of onions first kind of gives the heat somewhere to go, and it will help so that your garlic doesn't burn. So the pasta has now cooked for 8 minutes. Before I add the broccoli, I want to get some of the pasta water. We're going to use this pasta water in the sauce. It really helps to, the starch of the pasta helps the sauce to really stick to the pasta later on. And so I really recommend just if you get a couple noodles in there, try again, maybe go to the edge. I always recommend getting more water than you need. Just in case the sauce ends up being too thick, you can use this to kind of thin it out a little bit. Again, you have that starch. It's going to really, versus using just regular water, the sauce may contract from the pasta a little bit. So I have almost a cup here. There's still plenty in the pot. And then we're going to add that broccoli we chopped up before. Essentially, we're just cooking it for the last 2 minutes. Oops. I'll stir that in, and it's going to cook for 2 more minutes on the stove. Run into a situation where your pasta is done before your sauce is ready. I want you to take about a tablespoon of the olive oil from the recipe. So it calls for 3 tablespoons. Take just 1 tablespoon and drizzle it over your pasta. This will help keep it from sticking together, especially if you're using a gluten-free pasta like I am. I did a brown rice pasta today. It's not enough to make it so that the pasta won't absorb the sauce, but it's enough to just keep it from sticking together. Now we are making the sauce. This is the fun part. You need a blender. I have the biggest, so it's very big, very large. I have the biggest bullet style blender that they make, and I'm going to tell you from experience, do not fill this thing all the way full with the ingredients. I would recommend highly that you do half the ingredients and do it twice than to try to fit them all in here and it not work. from experience again. So I'm going to show you that process. We want to take the onion and garlic mixture, do about half of that. Some vegetable broth. If you don't have it on hand, that's fine, just use water. If you're not vegan or vegetarian, you could also use chicken broth or chicken stock. You could even amp up the protein by using a bone broth instead. Whatever you have on hand will be great, I promise. So then we are going to add some dairy-free milk. Use whatever you love, almond milk, cashew milk, oat milk. Again, if you're not vegan, vegetarian, I'm sure this would work with regular milk, but I have not tested that, just so you know. And then the main ingredient, we have to add in some white beans. These were canned white beans. It's 2 cans. I'm using cannellini beans today. I've also tested this with Great Northern white beans, and then I can highly recommend using butter beans as well if you have those. They get super creamy. But the reason the white beans work is because their texture is like a pillow on the inside. So when you add them with the rest of the ingredients, it just creates this super luscious, thick sauce that mimics what you would find with fettuccine Alfredo without any of the dairy or extra fat or anything like that. So I'm going to add in about a can of the beans. Again, I'm doing this in half so that I don't overwork my blender. If you have like a Vitamix or just a high-powered sit on the counter blender, you can just do it all at once. And then we are going to need olive oil. If you remember, I already used about a tablespoon on the pasta, so keep that in mind when you're making your sauce, because when you mix it in, it'll get a little bit of that oil as well. This is seasoned very simply with just salt, garlic powder, and dried thyme. I really, really love thyme with broccoli and with pasta in general. It adds just a floral note. It's very simple. Again, I'm just doing half. All this is going to get blended together at one point anyway, and we're going to blend this up. So I simply blended this for about 15 seconds. It doesn't take long. The beans want to break down really quickly. The sauce, when you first take it out, is a little bit watery, but it's thick. If you really want it to be super smooth, blend it for like a minute just to really work it. But here's the texture of the sauce right away. And as you cook the sauce and the pasta together, it will thicken even more. So if you don't think this is thick enough now, once it's done with the pasta, it'll thicken up as well. I just made the second batch of that. Add it in. And we're going to stir this up, and this is when we decide if we need any of that cooking liquid that we reserved from the pasta water. You can already see this is really creamy and thick, but we're going to let it cook just for a minute or two to give those beans a chance to get thick, and then we'll decide how much water we need. So I'm going to start by adding about 1/4 cup. And even if you don't think your pasta needs any water, I really recommend adding like 1 or 2 tablespoons, again, just to give it that starchiness that you're looking for to help the sauce stick to the noodles really well. I found that as this sits, it thickens even more. So if you want to keep some of your pasta water in the fridge for when you're reheating it, you can. Otherwise, you can just use water or vegetable broth or whatever you have on hand. So you can see that's already, it takes a second, but it helps create the even thicker sauce. It looks watery at first, I know, and it's deceiving. So just give it a couple minutes to really heat through again, and the sauce will really start to thicken. So I have to admit to you guys, we filmed these around lunchtime, and I am starving, so I already snuck a bite. It's delicious, I promise. But there are a few things that came to mind when I was sneaking those bites, and one of those is that the olive oil in this dish is very present in the flavor. So if you don't like that bite from olive oil, I would highly recommend going to a neutral oil like avocado oil instead. You just won't get that same like fruity bite from the olives. So there is one tip. And the second tip is that this is 1,000% delicious as it is, but if you add some red pepper flakes, oh, it's so good. That's my favorite way to enjoy this. So highly recommend, if you like any kind of spice, to add just a little bit of red pepper flakes to the dish. It's really going to elevate it a lot. I end up really enjoying it either way, but I wanted to give you that tip as well. So let's dive in. This is creamy, dreamy. Got some broccoli, some pasta, and the pasta is not mushy, as you can see, because we did not overcook it. And It's just so good. So I'm not gonna lie to you, this is not Alfredo sauce. There's not that cheesiness to it, but it is equally delicious on its own. It's just creamy, it's just comfort food. It's so delicious. I really hope that you try this recipe out, and if you do, let me know if you love it, because I really love it. If you love healthy recipes just like this one, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and follow me on your favorite social media platform. Until then, enjoy. Pasta. It's so good.